Welcome to Perspectives, a podcast by Essence Learning LLC, and a place where leaders learn from leaders. Let's join today's episode.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to Perspectives. So glad you're here to join us for this week's episode. We're excited to have the topic of respecting diversity in the workplace. I'm Valerie, CEO and founder of Essence Learning, and we have found that this topic of respecting differences in the workplace is universal to every organization, to every individual, because respect is fundamental to who we are and what we do. So we wanted to spend some time around this topic, maybe taking a deeper dive into what respect looks like in our workplace cultures. And so we have folks from across all of the United States and various industries to just share with us what respect in the workplace looks like, no matter what your differences are. And so I'd love for you to introduce yourself. We have a panel of four. So we're going to have some robust conversations. So before we get into that, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about let's start a little differently. What do you think about respect? As you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are, answer the question, do you think respect is earned or given?
You want me to go?
I want you to start. Go ahead. You're here in the studio with me. You're in the studio with me. You get picked on first, right?
Yes. So I am Kenitra Kiki Heights. I am a director of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And as always, that question is very difficult to answer, right? I come from the approach that it can be both. That respect is given, right? But it can be taken away with the lack of trust. Mm-hmm. But you can always earn respect back. Yeah. But I like to give people, no matter what or who they are, before I encounter them, I feel like everyone should be treated mm-hmm. respectfully. Yeah. So to me, respect is first given.
Okay. Thanks for that. Well, we'll toss it over to you, John.
Hi,
welcome.
John
Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here. John Davidson. I'm a people business partner supporting various groups across a number of industries over the years. But I would say that I would agree with Kiki on this one, that respect is initially given. And there's an intrinsic value that I think comes with that, and that everyone deserves respect in, some form or capacity based on just being a human being. But there are ways that can be eroded or built up over time as the relationship develops.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Welcome. Luis, introduce yourself to our listeners.
Hey everybody, Luis Munoz, D&I consultant for Toyota Motor North America. I would say respect is given. And I agree with my colleagues here on the call today that I think through life and through the years, sometimes people tend to fall off and you tend to lose that respect. But I also agree that you can also get it back. So that is my take on that.
All right. Hey, Crystal.
Hi, I'm Crystal Kohanke, and I'm the SVP and Chief People Officer for Pediatric Healthcare System. And I agree with my colleagues that it is, I think it starts with being given. You have to start somewhere. I do feel respect is definitely reciprocal. And I also feel the person that is in the power position in a relationship needs to go first. And so I think it's definitely a cycle, much like what my colleagues have said.
Very good. Thank you all for sharing that. And I'm going to jump in and say, I agree with you all that it is, I think what John said, it is an intrinsic, something that everyone should have, we should give. They don't have to earn because of their, just out of human dignity. So with that in mind, do we agree that then there's a spectrum, right? There's a spectrum of respect that you can go from a place of earned to given and back and forth because you earn it, and you can lose it. So we've all kind of talked through that as our definition of that. So I appreciate that. So with that in mind, I'm just going to share that this is the definition that Essence uses, Essence Learning uses when we define respect. We define it as treating others with dignity by maintaining their esteem and value in their individuality. So no matter what your differences are or who you are or what you bring to the table, that you should be treated with dignity, that we should always maintain the esteem and the value, the individuality of everyone. How do we within our organization, how do you within your organization as leaders maintain that respectful culture within your workplace? What are some of the things you do to ensure that you have a workplace that is full of respect, no matter who they are, no matter who comes to your workplace?
Let's say for Toyota, I think having respect for everyone is important. Um, Giving everybody the opportunity to have a voice, have a seat at the table, no matter what your job level, is critical. And I think that's very important for our organization because that brings in that diversity of thought. Your point, Valerie, pretty diverse in our culture here within Toyota. So we want to make sure that we leverage our talent to the maximum potential to make us stronger.
I think for me, just kind of jumping off of that, the respect is really formed at a foundational level, and it needs to be started in my mind from understanding that people are more than just their titles. They're
Right.
more than what they wear on their nameplate in an organization. And so recognizing that everyone comes in with stuff from outside, things going on in their personal life, things that have happened earlier in the day before this meeting that you're into, and understanding that at the base level, we're all individuals and human beings. And if we can keep that mindset central to the way that we operate, then respect becomes a lot easier because we're put in the position to then think about, oh, this person's going through things that I've been through, or I'm going through, or will go through. And there's a degree of empathy that comes along with that.
And I think the other thing that's really important too is, you hear a lot about the language around psychological safety and creating an environment where people can speak up, or creating an environment where if someone feels that they may not have been respected and how do you allow them to raise that concern? Because sometimes we don't know that we have just created a situation that has made somebody uncomfortable. But creating that environment where somebody can say, hey, Crystal, when you said this is how it made me feel. That's how we learn and we grow. And so I think that's a lot that to have some language around it as teams and as a culture to be able to raise that and to be able to have the conversation. That's the only way sometimes we know when there is a difference of feeling or opinion or a situation that you may not have seen or know of otherwise.
Very good point.
Mm-hmm. And to build on what Crystal said, because she's talking about creating the environment. That's so important amongst the diversity, equity, and inclusion world, is to build inclusive environments. And a part of building that respectful environment is ensuring no matter what, whoever walks through the door, they're able to bring 100% of who they are. And they're not able to, come in and be able to hide things, but we respect who they are as a person, their culture, the things that they bring to the table. And then also we give them a platform for them to have a voice as well. And I think those are ways that lead to respectful culture. And especially with leaders and leadership in the organization, having them cultivate a culture of respect and inclusion does help and trickle down into that. We're going to make sure that no matter what, you're going to respect people when they come into this door.
Awesome. So I think we all agree, and we've talked kind of high level as to conceptually respect should be there and why we should have it. But we also know that there's some challenges within the workplace where people don't feel respected, or there's barriers to where people feel respected. You all are diversity, equity, inclusion specialists. This is where you work. This is the field you're in, or you're really operating to make sure that that diversity, equity, inclusion is a strategic approach within your organization. So with that, what are some of the things that you're putting in place to ensure or to help overcome some of the barriers? Perhaps we should talk about what are some of those barriers. What are some of the things that are causing people to not feel respected or to have psychologically they're feeling unsafe? What are some of the things that are occurring? And then what are some of the things we can do to overcome that? I think, we don't mean to, we say that, or that's not the impact we wanted to have. That's not the intent we wanted to have. That's not the intention, but it's happening. So let's talk, let's kind of pull that back and let's be real about that. Everybody doesn't feel safe or respected at all times. And what are some of the things we can do to help support them?
Safe is a key word, right? Because building safe spaces and the safety, people safety is a huge responsibility as well for an organization. So I'd be remiss if not talking about the aspects of building a safe environment. And a part of that is ensuring also that you have effective policies in place so that people's safety is first in mind. That's why it's important to really make sure you have equitable policies for discrimination, workplace bullying, harassment, and so forth, because moments of disrespect do lead to those aspects. And especially now, the words that people use can be very harmful to someone's self-esteem and their safety. So ensuring that you have like workplace bullying in place, and you get those words out, and you ensure those policies and practices reaches your workforce. Those are all important to maintain safety of your people.
Right. Intentionally build that safe space. I love that. And maintaining that, and then effectively creating policies around it to put some teeth into the idea that, we are creating an intentional safe space for you. Thank you for that, Kiki. Well, what other things do we have to offer our listeners?
I'm going to throw in there, and I'm going to do a little plug for Essence Learning and Valerie. And in a previous life, we had done, like a lot of organizations, employee engagement surveys, and we had a question specifically around respect, and we knew that had a high correlation with overall engagement. And it was really kind of an interesting pilot. We brought Valerie and her team in to do respect in the workplace training to really help leaders, especially those that had fairly high scores in all areas, except for in this one particular area, and how that focus on creating that respectful environment makes a difference on the overall engagement of the team. And it was a really powerful exercise. And not only did we see teams, once they understood what that meant and how they could work together to be able to create those respectful teams and groups, we were able to see significant improvement in the overall engagement, and that had impacts and implications across the entire spectrum of the work that they did, everything from the way they treated their patients to the way they treated each other. So I say that when Valerie says, what are some things that you've done? I'm going to put a plug in for her training and the work that they did, because it was significant, and we were able to quantify the difference that awareness and that focus on how do we do this, because it's hard as a leader to hear your team feels like respect is something that you're not strong at. And it's personal, right? It hurts.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And so how do we create that environment for teams to know it's okay, and we've all been there, and then to put those processes in place to be able to, it's a skill, right? It's a skill. How do we teach them?
Jumping off of that. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, jumping off of that, I think intentionality is a really key part of building a respectful workplace relationship team. I've had a few leaders over the years, as I'm coaching them through a situation, say something to the effect of, I can't sound like HR all the time. That's exhausting. It takes a lot of time. And I'm like, but you need to build that skill, because, intentionally speaking, intentionally interacting with people, going in prepared, understanding the tone you want to carry, understanding the tone you don't want to carry, and driving towards that outcome that you want from that conversation or that interaction, and being very intentional with the way that you manage yourself in that situation, because leaders are coming into that situation, possibly amped up, they're charged up, they want to accomplish whatever it is that's going on or solve the problem. But we have to keep in mind that we're intentional in the way that we interact with this other individual, and making sure that we're building that respect through that conversation, not, tearing it down or leaving it even in the same place where we found that relationship.
And it's okay to say, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Or
say, I'm sorry. Right.
Yeah.
And leaders need to hold other leaders accountable for these actions as well, too. When John was talking, it reminded me of, we had a situation where we had two leaders in a room with several employees, and one of them was being very disrespectful and commenting on, how much money the employee makes, and commenting that they must sell drugs and, because of the color of their skin. And no other leader said anything to that person and said, that was very disrespectful what you said, it was wrong. And so as leaders, we need to be able to speak up in the room and hold other leaders accountable for moments of disrespect as well.
That's powerful.
I agree with everybody. I heard from Crystal talking about survey, right? I think for us, data is important. What does the data tell you? What is the our employees saying, right? And giving them a safe place to elaborate or speak about what they're feeling. For example, roundtables, things like that. John talked about being intentional, right? So having leaders there present and visible is key, but more importantly, is for them to listen, right? Just listen and hear what they're saying is critical.
Yeah. And what do you learn from those types of things? And, I'm going to just, you guys ran us through quite a bit. We talked about being intentional and creating that safe space, creating a place for us to learn and become aware, holding ourselves accountable, managing ourselves, holding others accountable for what they say and do and how it impacts us. And some ways that we can learn and better understand what's going on in our organization is through our data, as well as taking that data and then having some listening opportunities, some listening posts, some focus groups, some roundtables so that we can hear back. So when we hear that and when we learn more and we understand that, what are some of the ways that you as a leader are helping to navigate not being the HR police, as you talked about, and everybody doesn't have to sound like HR, but how do we help our organization hold people accountable and recognize when it's happening? And what are some of the things that you're doing to help me? If I don't know, I don't know. And if I'm saying things I shouldn't say, and I am now aware, now what do I do?
I think
Yeah.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, continue to be an ally and an advocate for that individual. So if they, have received the feedback, they were oblivious to it in advance, or whether they weren't, and now they're on an adventure and they want to, try to improve that skill set area, continue to support them, continue to provide the feedback. I'm radical candor is coming to mind, and all the different ways that we can or cannot provide feedback, but making sure that we're supportive but direct in the way that we continue to interact with this individual when we see both positive movement in the areas they want to focus on in terms of respect and having an aura of that about them, but also giving them continual feedback when they miss the mark a little bit, or when they have some opportunities that they can continue to learn from. And even in that interaction, that respectful interaction of saying, hey, I wanted to give you feedback, are you in a place where you can receive that right now, what we've talked about in the past, and go from there. But continual feedback and allyship with that individual as they're learning.
That even makes for a flip side of the safe environment. So making it safe for me to show up as my authentic self. But if I find myself in a situation where my behaviors are not ideal, or that I find myself in that I've disrespected someone or shown created some type of people to feel uncomfortable or some type of attention, then it's also safe for me to get that feedback without me feeling as if I'm being ridiculed or reprimanded, or, now everything is at risk because I made this mistake and overstepped or understepped or something to that effect. So that creates a safe environment for me to learn when I did something wrong or inappropriate or something like that. I'm sure there's a window, and from an HR perspective, it's where that goes. But you guys might want to tap into that in a little while. But basically creating a safe environment for us to learn, someone to coach us and provide us feedback. Great.
Yeah. I was going to hit on exactly what John had said, as that continual feedback, and being an advocate for that person as well. And then also making sure that you take action. I think Crystal gave a great example when she said, we had the employee engagement survey. That's a tool that they use to measure the amount of respect that they could feel that leaders were given. And then also taking action. So having Essence Learning come and do the training on the essence of respect in the workplace, that's an actionable step in order to make a difference and to start changing. And so after we do those things, like the engagement surveys and roundtables, we just don't take the information and just hold on to it. We actually need to create actionable steps to take action and to actually do things to start to really adapt and change the culture.
So that's that intentional space. Great.
I would say have that open, constructive discussion with leaders. Once you identify the gap, having those discussions is critical. and also providing the recommendation, no matter how difficult it might be, to get those resources to solve for that problem that you're trying to solve is critical.
Well, and
Having
then
that
sometimes-
conversation.
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. Now, I was repeating what he was saying, having that conversation. Go ahead, Crystal.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, we have a colleague that would say, feedback is the breakfast of champions, but sometimes you're not hungry. and you also have to be prepared for when you provide feedback to someone and they're not ready to hear it or don't want to hear it or can't hear it. And what's that action that goes with that?
Yeah. And how do we know, where's that tightrope for us? Because, we're dealing with our own biases and our own assumptions and our own traditional thinking, and we're always challenging ourselves internally as leaders. Even though we are educated around this space, we are practicing in this space, we're always having to manage ourselves. And so oftentimes we find ourselves engaging others to help us with, hey, I said this, hey, this happened. How does, this is what I was thinking. Can you help me? I think one of the other tools is teach people how to engage someone else, get another perspective. Here's what I'm thinking. How can I think differently? Seek to find another way to think about things. And so as we're coaching and we're sharing this is what you said, and this is how it may have impacted it. Give them another experience and let them see this is how it impacted them. This is why. Let's talk about another way we could have done it. So not just tell them, hey, when you said that wasn't, but we were all on to give them a different perspective. Hence this podcast perspectives. Really, I love it because I think that's key to all of this work, is allowing us to walk into a place and we are willing to share our experiences and allow people to hear our perspectives. But to what Crystal and John were saying is, hey, I want to hear your perspective as well. Give me what was going on. Why were you thinking that? So that I can better understand and manage some of those things as a leader, or they can better understand and manage me depending upon my difference. So, what are some of the differences that you're finding is creating workplace tension? So, is it generational differences? Is it positional differences? What are some of the differences that are really within your organization that are really causing you guys to say, we got to step in and start to help support and create a more respectful workplace? Because these are different approaches, different thoughts, different ways of doing things. What are some of the things you're experiencing in your workplace where differences, what we call differences, make a difference?
All of the above. I think there's moments for all of the above to take place, right?
Oh my goodness.
Because when you say, managing your personal biases, assumptions, and stereotypes, that's exactly what gets people into trouble, is when they walk into the room and they react based upon their biases, their stereotypes, their preferences, and their assumptions. And it could be about any cultural difference, race, gender, generational, whatever. They have it set in their mind. This is how a certain group of people are. And so I react towards that. And that is a bias that they have gotten in their head, or a stereotype that they've heard from somewhere. And so when they react towards people that they work with those biases and stereotypes, that's what causes those moments of disrespect to happen. And you say, those shocking manners, did you really just say that to me? Or did you just really think that I would do that without even getting to know who I am? And, people are so concerned with time, they don't get to know who people are. And that is also another issue. It's like taking the time, like Louis said, to listen to your employees and taking the time to get to know who they are, and without just automatically flying off of, well, I assume that this person is this way, so I'm just going to react towards that. And that's what gets a lot of people into those moments of, disrespect, where they're being disrespectful.
Awesome. Did you really just say that? It's great.
I had a situation recently with a leader. We had recently done employee experience surveys, and some of the feedback that came back was that individuals didn't feel safe approaching or challenging an idea that this leader, brought forward or had, or the direction that they wanted to go. That they felt that, oftentimes this leader would belittle the messenger, belittle the person that brought this other idea. And so in this conversation, there was a lot of resistance at first. And, we got to the point where I asked a question. I said, well, why do you think that these people bring these ideas up? What's their motivation? And this leader sat there for a minute and I said, do you think that they're coming with good intent, or do you think they're trying to throw you off or make you look like you don't know what you're talking about? I said, odds are they're not waking up every day wanting to see the organization burn. They're wanting to, they have a for suggesting this idea that they have. And so when we respond in the way that we have in some of these situations that have come up in this feedback, it teaches your organization that they can't bring other ideas. And it creates this where there are no other points of view aside from one. And that led into well, we have such tight timelines, and that's okay. We need to look at that. That's kind of one issue that's attached to this. But tight timelines or not, respecting the workforce that you have and making sure that people feel valued and bringing their ideas to help what they feel might be a better solution will continue to generate more of those and create an environment that over time is stronger than if we don't address this particular thing. Mm-hmm. So all of that kind of encapsulated, and just making sure that we're conscious of how we respond to situations where these kind of things come up.
Awesome. Yeah, and one of the things is you talked about that, John, is the timeline. People put that into why I don't have time to respect someone. I don't have time to listen to someone. I don't have time for we're moving at a rapid pace. And I think that once we master the skill of demonstrating respect, no matter the differences, we save time, because we're not pausing to have these sidebar conversations about, did you really just say that? I can't believe that. And I'm not going to, that's time consuming to try to go back and mend those relationships when we could just have spent enough time to say thank you or please, or that's a great idea. Let's, those things that demonstrate respect. So that was huge. What do you think, and this is a question for all of us to kind of jump in on and have a discussion about, do you think that we've seen more voices come out to say they don't feel respected, or they feel uncomfortable, or they don't feel safe based upon some of the events that have happened and some of the external events that are happening that are spilling over into our workplace, some of the societal events? Do you think that has now created an awareness or the courage or a path for people to now start sharing, or do you think it's always been there? So what's your thoughts?
I think for us, and I think for everybody, people are just tired. You had COVID, you have all kinds of things going on in our communities, politics, people are far this, far that. They bring that into the workplace, and they tie in personal life, right? Everything's so expensive right now, right? With inflation and all. And it's just, when is this all going to end or stop or get back to normal, right? So as an organization, being cognizant that it's not just about work, but it's also that work-life balance, right? And kind of tying it to that mental health, and giving opportunities for our team members to have a platform where they can kind of have those discussions, or maybe having resources available if they want to do those privately is critical.
And people are tired, and we need a place to rest and feel respected and valued, and that we're able to contribute and not just going at 1,000,000 miles an hour. So, you bring up an excellent point as to, may not be external, internal. It's a combination of all that. Our work life, our internal life has created stress levels that we haven't had to deal with before. That's a very good point.
Yeah. I think it's also, and I agree with Luis on his points, and I just want to add an additional one, generationally as well. I find that younger generations are more willing to speak up because of what they value out of life. And they value things like mental health. They value diversity, equity, and inclusion, and they value their work-life balance as well. And so when they feel that those items aren't getting met and their personal needs are not getting met or valued or respected, then they're more likely to speak up, and they're more likely to say something about it. So I feel like our younger generations are coming into the workforce and using more of their voice to really fight for what they want and what they need in order to be successful in the workplace.
I would jump in there just really quick and say I agree with Kiki on all of her points. I think the younger generations have created a space where it's okay culturally, societally, and safe to talk about those things when past generations might not have had that. And so the value placed on those things is different, or the appropriateness of going to someone and saying, hey, I've got this going on, I need, time, or I need whatever, is different in each generation. So just making sure that, yes, I do think people are coming forward more and having these conversations more. I think that's great. I think that businesses absolutely need to take that into consideration, and leaders need to, because that's where we are. And I think that's the right thing to do. But also understanding that individuals that have come before that might not have had that same level of it's okay to approach these topics should also be brought along, and understand that they're coming from a different perspective as well, and making space in the workplace for all those generations that come in with these different experiences around mental health, or around psychological safety, or around societal welfare for minority groups and different things. So definitely, I agree with Kiki on those things.
Safety looks a lot different than for a younger generation, and what's tolerated and accepted looks a lot different. So that's great points. Thank you for that. Crystal, anything to add before? I think the producers are telling me that we've had a good time on this discussion, but I don't want to end it. But if there's something you'd like to add to that, Crystal, what's going on?
Well, I think something that John just said just kind of resonated with me too. And I've heard leaders, especially senior leaders, that are of older generations. I've heard, well, why should I do that? Nobody did that for me. And so it is a real phenomenon. And how do you help people to say that maybe that didn't happen for you, but you can make a difference now? And that's it's pretty powerful what you said, John. I thought it was spot on.
We have a lot more that we could talk about on this topic, and maybe we'll do a part 2. I hope that you guys will come back. I didn't get through all of my questions at all that I wanted to talk with you about, but I appreciate what you've shared with us. And I know that our listeners are taking notes and things have resonated with them. And I hope that that they will take this back into the workplace, no matter where you are within the organization, no matter what level you work within the organization. Respect is all of our responsibilities as we move through the organization. So we all need to have our voice. We all need to make it safe, and we all need to feel that if someone does challenge us or provide us with feedback, that it's with the intention of making sure that our workplace is the best workplace. And so that's our goal. And so we hope that you as leaders, particularly those who are on this podcast right now, I know that you guys have got your sleeves rolled up and that you're working towards this effort. And we're just inviting all of our listeners to join us in that effort. Thank you all so much again for the conversation. We'll continue it. Thank you, listeners, for joining in. And we hope to see you next week with our next week's podcast. You guys have a great one.
Thank you for joining Perspectives, a podcast by Essence Learning LLC. Essence Learning is your solution to personal and professional development. We partner with our clients to develop a learning strategy that will increase productivity, enhance performance, and align with their purpose and goals. For more information, visit us online at essencelearning.net or call us at 1-877-657-5755.